The room went quiet the moment she laughed at him. A single dad in a faded plaid shirt, standing among executives in tailored suits, didn't belong, or so she thought. The CEO's smirk said everything as her $100 million deal began slipping away. Foreign investors exchanged uneasy glances, ready to walk. Her team froze, no one able to fix the mistake unraveling in real time. Then the man she had just mocked stepped forward. Calm. Uninvited. Risking everything. She almost told security to remove him. But when he started speaking, the entire room stopped. Because in seconds, he did what none of them could. 6 hours earlier, at 5:40 in the morning, the lobby of Helix Tower in the Boston seaport was still dark. Adam Holloway pushed his maintenance cart down the corridor of the 34th floor, the floor that belonged to Marston Bridge Capital. He worked the way some men prayed. He taped a curling edge of carpet near the elevator bank. He replaced 2 halogen bulbs in the Aspen conference room. He tested the conference microphones one by one, listening for the small dishonesty of a loose connection. His hands moved without thought. The work had become a kind of liturgy. He had been at it almost 3 years, and the corridors of the 34th floor had memorized him as much as he had memorized them. Renate Kohler appeared at the end of the hallway, holding 2 paper cups of black coffee. She was 63, German-born, head of building administration. She had known Adam for almost 3 years. She handed him a cup without asking. They exchanged half a sentence in German, the way they always did before sunrise, when no one else was on the floor. Then an intern from the legal department turned the corner, and Adam shifted into English mid-word. Renate sighed. 3 years, Adam. You can't hide forever in a maintenance vest. He smiled, just barely, and didn't answer. At 7:15 he was home. The apartment in Dorchester was small and warm, smelling faintly of toast. Eloise sat at the kitchen table in her pajamas, drawing an owl with colored pencils, her tongue pressed against her front teeth. She was 7. She asked, without looking up, whether he could pick her up early today. Adam promised 3:15 sharp. He hung the owl on the refrigerator next to 3 other drawings and a small black and white photograph, him, Lauren, and a 2-week-old Eloise on the steps of the Capitol. Lauren's smile was half covered by a magnet shaped like an apple. He straightened the magnet, then changed his mind and left it where it was. At 8:50 he was back at the tower. The Aspen conference room had been redressed overnight, banners for Werner, Hauptmann, Sakai Industrial Trust, and Marston Bridge Capital lined the back wall. Whitley Marston walked in with her team at 8:55, reviewing the final slide deck, her voice quick and exact. Adam was crouched at the far end, labeling a power outlet. When she passed, her gaze slid across him the way a gaze slides across a chair. At 9, the delegations entered. Klaus Werner came first, silver-haired, gray blazer, slow handshake. Hiroshi Sakai followed, bowing precisely 15 degrees. Adam, retreating toward the side door, paused for half a second when he heard Klaus call his deputy by name Bernhard. A name Adam had not heard spoken aloud in 8 years. He left the room. In the hallway he leaned against the wall and breathed out slowly. Bernhard. The name belonged to another life, late nights in a Bonn embassy office, Bernhard reaching across the desk to scrawl a single correction in red ink on Adam's draft. Renate appeared at the corner, watching him without speaking. Just a coincidence, Adam said. Coincidences in this building, Renate answered, don't last past noon. Adam went back to the assignment board and wrote his own name into the slot for Aspen. The pen trembled through half a stroke. By 10:42 the meeting had reached slide 14. Whitley was walking the room through the co-investment structure when Klaus Werner cut her off mid-sentence. His voice was calm, the way a surgeon's voice is calm before an incision. Frau Marston, the carve-out for cross-border tax shielding under Section 3.2 your draft uses American single-tier framing. Sakai-san's fund cannot accept that. Was this discussed with your counsel? Whitley glanced at Dana Whitcomb, her general counsel. Dana opened a folder. Her face went pale by degrees. Hiroshi Sakai added quietly, in clean, unaccented English, in Tokyo, this would also be incompatible. We came to Boston believing it had been resolved. The temperature of the room shifted. Whitley tried to recover by rephrasing, but the more she spoke, the more it became visible that she did not understand the substance of the objection. Preston Calder, her chief strategy officer, sat at her right hand and made notes on his phone with a composure that did not match the moment. He said nothing to help her. Across the table, the head of Werner Hauptmann's foreign investor relations turned a slow page in his briefing book. At the far end of the room Adam was changing a halogen bulb. He heard Section 3.2. He knew Section 3.2. He had written its original framing in the USTR draft of 2017, on a Tuesday, in a windowless room in the Eisenhower Executive Office building. He stood on the ladder, his hand frozen on the bulb. The dead bulb was warm against his palm. Whitley scanned the room for a miracle. Her eyes landed on Adam, the man in the faded plaid shirt with the maintenance lanyard. She let out a small laugh, half nervous, half contemptuous, and said, loud enough for the room, "Maybe our maintenance gentleman has a thought." A few people laughed with her. The kind of laughter that comes from the relief of someone else being the target. Klaus Werner did not. Hiroshi Sakai did not. Dana Whitcomb dropped her eyes to the table. Adam stepped down from the ladder. He set the old bulb in the box. Slowly. He walked 3 steps to the head of the table. The room went quiet without being asked. "Mrs. Marston, with respect," he said, his voice level, "Section 3.2 needs a dual-tier carve-out matched to Werner Hauptmann's 2019 holding restructure, with an Asia-Pacific safe harbor referencing the aligned disclosure protocol. Your current draft references the 2014 baseline. It was superseded." Klaus Werner lifted his head, slowly. The blue of his eyes settled on Adam with the precision of a man who had spent 40 years measuring the weight of strangers across a negotiating table. "And you are?" Adam did not answer at once. He turned to Hiroshi Sakai and bowed exactly 15 degrees, no more, and spoke a short sentence in Japanese. Sakai sat up straighter. Klaus, watching, switched into German a single test sentence. Adam answered in German, accurate, polite, with the right register for a senior counterpart. Whitley's mouth opened. The smile had gone long ago. Adam turned back to her chair. He did not sit. He spoke softly enough that only she could hear. "The deal can still be saved today. But you'll have to let me speak." At the other end of the table, Preston Calder thumbed a message from his personal phone. The contact was saved as M.R. Not an internal number. The reply came back in less than 30 seconds. Preston turned the phone face down on his thigh, and his expression did not change at all. That was the most dangerous thing about it. Whitley hesitated for 3 seconds. Her entire career hung on those 3 seconds, then she nodded, once. "Please." Adam walked around to the opposite head of the table. He did not take her chair. He stood at the side, near her but not over her, the geometry of an advisor, not a replacement. He asked Dana for her slide deck and turned to Section 3.2. For the next 10 minutes he sketched the new carve-out structure on a sheet of legal paper by hand, no laptop, just a fountain pen and the angle of his wrist. He drew the dual-tier shielding as 2 interlocking rectangles, labeled in shorthand only the senior counsel would recognize. Klaus Werner leaned forward, Sakai nodded at every clause. Adam proposed 3 changes. A dual-tier shielding mechanism for the German side. A 3-party escrow rather than a 2-party one. And a delayed disclosure clause for Sakai, calibrated to the Japanese fiscal reporting cycle April 1st rather than January 1st. Klaus put a technical question. Adam answered without hesitating. Sakai asked something in Japanese, using a slightly archaic phrasing. Adam answered in Japanese, then translated immediately into English. Sakai-san asks whether the aligned disclosure protocol still names its original co-authors. It does. I am one of them. Whitley's head turned. She went still. Dana Whitcomb whispered to her. He's the Holloway and Marsh Holloway 2017, Whitley. That paper is required reading at Wharton. Klaus Werner smiled for the first time that morning. Then we have something to work with. Sakai nodded. The meeting was suspended until 2 o'clock, to allow language to be redrafted. When the room emptied, Whitley stayed behind. She did not thank him at once. She did not yet know what to call him. Finally she said, "Mr. Holloway. My office." 20 minutes. Adam said, 12. I have to call my daughter's school. She nodded. In her corner office on the 34th floor, Whitley did not sit down at her own desk. She walked to the window. Boston Harbor was gray under low fog. A gull cut across the lower part of the glass and disappeared. Why are you mopping floors in my building? Because at 3:15, Adam said, I need to pick up a 7-year-old. And no policy desk in Washington will let me do that. Whitley was quiet for a long moment. Outside, a tugboat blew its horn somewhere south of Rose Wharf. Then, I owe you an apology. You owe yourself one. I'll be fine either way. There was no bitterness in his answer. It was simply direct. Whitley realized she had never been spoken to that way by anyone working below her in the org chart. It had not occurred to her, until that moment, that the absence of such honesty had been one of the things eroding her judgment for years. She offered him a formal role in the rest of the negotiation, as an outside advisor with a fee. Adam thought about it. 3 conditions: I'm done at 3 o'clock today. I don't sign anything that puts me back on a federal list. And I don't want this in any press release. Whitley agreed to all 3. She held out her hand. Adam took it. His palm was warm, the calluses thick along the inside edge, the hand of a man who had spent 3 years moving carts, not signing billion-dollar contracts. She held his hand half a second longer than necessary. He turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. Mrs. Marston Calder texted someone outside the firm at 10:51. You may want to know who. She froze. At 1:30 Whitley summoned Dana Whitcomb to her office and locked the door. They pulled the device logs together, side by side at the monitor. Preston Calder had indeed sent a text from his personal phone at 10:51. At 11:14 there had been a 47-second call to a number with a Chicago area code. Whitley said the name aloud before Dana could. Meridian Reach Capital, Marston Bridge's most consistent rival on the East Coast, and the one fund that would benefit most cleanly if the Midwest Precision Tooling deal collapsed. Whitley walked the perimeter of the office once, slowly, the way a person paces when they need to think with their legs. Dana raised the obvious problem. If they accused Preston without hard evidence, he had enough standing with the board to flip the narrative back on Whitley by the end of the week. He had cultivated 3 of the 5 outside directors over the course of 2 years of careful lunches. They needed content, not just metadata. Something Preston had actually said, in his own words. 2 floors below, Adam stood in the corridor outside the maintenance room with his phone pressed to his ear. The teacher at St. Margaret's said Eloise had drawn a picture that morning. Her dad standing next to a tall building, she said. Adam smiled at the corner of his mouth and confirmed 3:15. He sat on the bench in the hallway. Renate came down the corridor with a small lunch tin and set it beside him. Cheese sandwich, German pickles, a square of dark chocolate. Klaus Werner asked about you in the lobby, she said. By name. I know. What now, Adam? Now I help her finish what I started 10 years ago. Then I go pick up Eloise. At 2 o'clock the meeting resumed. Adam sat next to Whitley still in the same plaid shirt, no change of clothes. Klaus made a small joke as they took their seats. In Munich we would have given him a tie. In Boston, perhaps it isn't necessary. The room laughed for the first time. Whitley glanced sideways. Adam did not react. The negotiation moved fast after that. Sakai raised a question about escrow. Adam suggested a neutral bank in Zurich. Sakai agreed before the next sentence was finished. Preston tried once to slow it down. He proposed postponing the signing to the following week, to let legal review the redraft. Adam answered him politely, but the door closed in the answering, "We have alignment in the room today. Postponement loses momentum and gives competitors a window. With respect, sir, I'd recommend signing the term sheet by 4. Klaus nodded. Preston went silent. Under the table his fist closed. By 2:55 the term sheet had been finalized in draft form. Sakai and Werner agreed to sign the principal version the next morning, after their respective counsel had reviewed. Adam stood up at 2:58. Mrs. Marston. I have to go. She nodded immediately. As he passed behind her chair, his shoulder brushed her hair accidental, half a second. She did not turn. But she felt it. No one in the room noticed except Renate Kohler, who was standing in the doorway. At 3:14 Adam walked across the courtyard at St. Margaret's. The afternoon light was thin and silver against the brick. Eloise saw him through the window and ran out, hugging his leg. He lifted her up. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. A message from Whitley. Tomorrow 9 a.m. Same room. Please. The next morning, at 8:20, Adam walked Eloise to school. She was wearing a mustard yellow sweater Lauren's color and she asked, halfway down the block, why he had been 5 minutes late getting home the day before. I helped someone fix something hard. Hard like the washing machine? Harder. But not as hard as braiding your hair. Eloise giggled. She skipped a few steps ahead, then waited for him at the corner the way Lauren used to wait, balanced on the curb like a small bird. Adam caught up. He held her hand the rest of the way to the gate. By 9, he was back in the Aspen room. Werner and Sakai were already seated. Whitley wore something different, still authority, but lighter, a navy blazer instead of black. Adam wore a pale blue shirt. Renate had laid it on his chair that morning without saying a word. The shirt fit him the way a borrowed shirt fits, almost right, almost his. The term sheet was signed at 10:47. Werner held Adam's handshake longer than necessary. Herr Holloway du Felst in Washington. Aber Boston hat Gluck. You are missed in Washington. But Boston is fortunate. Sakai bowed 18 degrees. Deeper than usual. After the room emptied, Whitley and Adam stayed. Coffee, she said. You've earned more than coffee, but I'm starting small. They went down to the cafe off the lobby and sat across from each other. The first time without a conference table between them. Tell me about your daughter, Whitley said. Adam was surprised. Not about the deal. Not about USTR. About Eloise. He told her. Lauren, aortic aneurysm. 3 years ago. The funeral, on a Tuesday in early April, with the cherry trees on the National Mall just beginning to come open. The decision in the first month afterward to leave Washington because he could not endure the diplomatic dinners continuing as if nothing had happened. Boston, because Lauren's older sister lived in Cambridge and could help with after-school hours. He spoke evenly, without performance. When he stopped, Whitley was quiet for a long time. I've been a CEO for 6 years, she said. No one has ever told me a story without trying to sell me something at the end. I'm not selling. I'm just answering. She drank her coffee. He looked out the window. A container ship was moving in the harbor. You know that ship? She asked. Hapag-Lloyd. Hamburg Fleck. It'll dock at 2. She laughed. The first time she had laughed at something not connected to work in longer than she could remember. The barista glanced over and smiled, the way strangers smile at the laughter of someone who has clearly not laughed in a while. 2 floors above, Preston Calder was on a call. His voice was low and tight. He saved it. They signed. We need a plan B by Friday. That afternoon Whitley sent Adam a message. Friday evening, would you and your daughter join me for an early dinner at the harbor? Casual. No business. Adam read it 3 times. He answered. Eloise will want to know what you do. Be ready. In her office, Whitley laughed out loud, alone. At 3:15 that day, Adam picked up Eloise. As they walked to the car she asked, Daddy, who did you help yesterday? He thought about it. Someone named Whitley. Is Whitley like a fairy tale name? A little. Thursday morning, Adam came in early. 5:30. The corridors were still on the night mode lighting, the long fluorescent panels on every other circuit, the hum of the ventilation lower than during the day. Renate was already waiting in the maintenance room, holding a navy hardcover folder, faded along the spine. She was sitting on the edge of the desk, not the chair. Her coat was already on. Adam. I've kept this for 2 years. Tomorrow I retire. My husband can't be alone any longer. Before I go, you need to see this. She set the folder on the table. Inside were printed copies of internal emails between Preston Calder and a man named Marcus Reinhardt, dated through the fall of 2023. Renate had quietly collected them from the shared printer on the 34th floor, the one Preston had forgotten to set to private printing. She had collected them not in a single sweep but page by page over months, Each time the printer had spat out something a chief strategy officer should not have been printing on a shared device. Marcus Reinhardt was not Meridian Reach Capital. Marcus Reinhardt was Klaus Werner's nephew. He was the deputy director of a competing German fund called Hauptmann Düsseldorf Beteiligung, which had broken away from Werner Hauptmann after a family dispute in 2020 over succession in the Munich operation. Preston was not just sabotaging Marston Bridge from inside. He was funneling information to the rival faction inside Klaus's own family. Adam read the October 15 email twice. Preston had promised the term sheet draft and the list of signatories so Hauptmann Düsseldorf could intervene diplomatically and erode Klaus's family standing. If the Midwest Precision deal collapsed publicly, Klaus would be voted out by the Werner Hauptmann Supervisory Board and Marcus Reinhardt would take over. The emails grew bolder by month. By late September, Preston had attached an internal memo with Whitley's signature on the cover page. "I didn't know who to give it to," Renate said. "You came back. So now it's yours." "Why me, Renate?" "Because Bernhard told me about you in 2014, he said, if you ever meet Adam Holloway, trust him. He doesn't sell people." Adam was quiet for a long time. "Bernhard died in 2019. "I know," Renate said. "He told me before." At 7:40 Adam carried the folder up to Whitley's office and laid it on her desk. She read for 12 minutes without speaking. Her face moved through surprise, then anger, then a clean cold focus. "This isn't just sabotage," she said. "This is international. If we expose Calder publicly, Werner Hauptmann implodes. The deal we just signed becomes worthless. Then we don't expose publicly," Adam said. "We tell Klaus directly. Privately. Today." Whitley looked at him. "You do that for him? You don't owe Klaus Werner anything." "I owe the structure. I built part of it. If it falls because of dirty politics, that's my name on it too." She nodded. They scheduled an emergency meeting with Klaus at his hotel, the Mandarin Oriental, Boston at 11. Whitley made the call herself. Klaus answered on the third ring and agreed without asking for the subject in advance, which was the most German thing he had done all week. At 10:30 they walked together across the lobby of Helix Tower. They did not speak. Their shadows crossed the polished stone in two thin parallels. Preston Calder, standing by the elevator bank, watched them leave. He took out his phone and held it without dialing. At 11 sharp, in the Mandarin Oriental suite on the 14th floor, Klaus Werner was standing by the window with a cup of tea, wearing a wool cardigan over his shirt. The Charles River was visible through the glass, half frozen at the edges. Adam and Whitley came in. Werner read their faces before either of them spoke. He understood at once that Adam had not asked for the meeting over a small matter. Adam set the folder on the low table. Werner opened it. He read in German first, scanning, then translated key passages into English under his breath for Whitley's benefit. The color rose along his jaw. After 3 minutes he set the folder down. His hand was unsteady against the saucer. "Marcus. Mein eigener Neffe, Marcus. My own nephew." He sat for a long time without speaking. Then, "Adam. Was Schlägs du vor? What do you propose?" Adam gave it in 3 parts. 1. You call your supervisory board chair before Marcus does. You frame the narrative first. 2. We keep Calder in his chair until 3 this afternoon. Then Whitley terminates with cause, with documented evidence on the table. 3. Sakai-san is told today, by you, before any rumor crosses the Pacific. Trust must come from you, not from the leak. Werner nodded slowly. He turned to Whitley. "Frau Marston. Are you prepared to fire your chief strategy officer this afternoon?" "I should have done it last week." "Then we proceed." By 12:30 they were back at Helix Tower. Whitley summoned Dana Whitcomb and the head of building security. They prepared termination documents. Preston's system access would be silently revoked at 2:55. At 3 o'clock, in the smaller Birch conference room, Whitley sat at the head of the table with Dana on her right and 2 security officers along the wall. Preston Calder walked in with his usual confidence. Whitley wasted no time. "Preston, these are emails between you and Marcus Reinhardt, dated October 15th, 22nd, and 29th. This is your personal phone log showing 11 calls to Hauptmann Dusseldorf in 3 weeks. This is your termination letter. Effective immediately. He tried. Anger, then threats of suit, then the standard play he would take it to the board. Whitley did not move. The board chair has already been briefed. Klaus Werner himself called him at 1 p.m. You don't have a board anymore, Preston. Preston turned, finally, to look at Adam, who was standing in the corner. You. A janitor. I'm a father, Mr. Calder, Adam said. Today I had time to be both. Preston was escorted out at 3:18. Whitley sat down for the first time in 2 hours. Her hands trembled lightly. Adam pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. He set a glass of water in front of her and said nothing. She looked at the glass for a long time. Then she looked at him. I almost lost everything because I laughed at a man in a plaid shirt. You almost lost everything because someone you trusted lied. The shirt is incidental. Adam, dinner tomorrow. Eloise. I'd still like that. Eloise asked me last night what color you wear. I said I didn't know yet. Whitley smiled, faintly. Tell her navy. With a coat in case the harbor's cold. At 4:30 Adam left the building. In the lobby Renate Kohler was waiting with a small cardboard box of personal items. Her last day. Adam embraced her, briefly, and she whispered in German, Lauren wear stoles. Lauren would be proud. He didn't answer. But he carried the box for her out to the taxi. Friday at 5:30 in the evening, Legal Harborside, 2nd floor. A window table looking out across the harbor. Whitley arrived 15 minutes early, which was unusual for her. She wore a navy cashmere sweater, her hair down, no jewelry except thin earrings. She had changed 3 times before leaving the apartment, and the realization that she had changed 3 times had embarrassed her enough that she had finally just put the navy sweater back on and left. Adam and Eloise arrived at 5:42. Eloise was in a red coat, holding her stuffed owl. She looked at Whitley for half a second, the way children evaluate strangers they've heard about, then said, Are you Whitley? Whitley bent down to her eye level. Yes. And I'm guessing you're Eloise. I drew a picture for you. Daddy said you like blue. The picture. A tall building with a man in plaid standing next to a brown-haired woman in navy, and a little girl in between. The man and the woman were the same height. The girl was holding both their hands. Whitley took it carefully. Her hand shook a little. I'll hang this in my office. Does your office have a window? Yes. Good. Pictures need light. They ate lightly. Eloise asked Whitley if she had any pets. No, but she liked cats. If she could braid hair. No, if she liked drawing. Yes, but not very well. Adam watched, without intervening. By 7 Eloise was sleepy, her head against Adam's shoulder, the stuffed owl tucked under her chin. Whitley watched her breathing. Adam, she said quietly. I haven't sat at a table like this in 7 years. My ex-husband and I never had children. After the divorce, I told myself I didn't have time. Then I told myself I didn't want them. Then I told myself it didn't matter. And now? Now I'm holding a drawing made by a 7-year-old who thinks I'm worth painting. Silence. The waiter came past with the dessert tray and Adam waved him off without breaking eye contact with her. Whitley, Adam said. I haven't been here either. Lauren and we always thought there'd be more time. There wasn't. I don't know how to do this. But I'm not in a hurry. Neither am I. Her hand rested on the table. His was near it, not touching. 2 centimeters apart. Eloise breathed evenly between them. Outside, a ship pulled away from the dock not Hapag-Lloyd, a smaller one with yellow running lights. At 7:45, Adam carried Eloise out to the car. Whitley walked with him to the door. On the steps, the harbor wind tugged at her scarf. Adam stopped to fix the red hat on Eloise's head. Whitley watched. Thank you. For yesterday, for today. For all of it. You don't have to thank me, Whitley. I know. That's why I'm doing it. On the drive home through Dorchester, Eloise asleep in the back seat, Adam glanced down at the passenger seat. There was a second drawing there. Eloise had made it at the restaurant and forgotten to give it. A little girl, holding the hands of two adults, under a tree turning autumn colors. Adam saw it at a red light. He set his palm on the page and didn't lift it, the light turned green. He drove on. 2 weeks later, in early November, the Midwest Precision Tooling deal closed officially at $103.4 million above the original target, thanks to the escrow structure Adam had designed. The press release was short and did not mention his name. That had been one of his 3 conditions, and Whitley had honored it without being reminded. The Wall Street Journal ran a paragraph on page 7 of the business section, focused on the structural innovation and crediting an outside advisor whom the firm declined to name. Marcus Reinhardt was removed from every Werner family position. The Munich operation reabsorbed 2 business lines that had been spun out in 2020. The internal narrative, carefully managed by Klaus, attributed the realignment to structural simplification. Nobody outside the family knew what had really happened. Klaus Werner sent Adam a bottle of Mosel wine with a single line in German, written by hand. Du hast den Strukturrahmen gerettet. Und mehr. You saved the framework. And more. Hiroshi Sakai sent a wooden box of tea from Kyoto with a short English note. You honored the form. Honor in your home now. The tea came wrapped in white paper tied with a single dark green cord. Adam opened it at the kitchen table while Eloise watched, fascinated. Adam kept his maintenance contract for the moment. He had not decided. Whitley had offered him a senior advisor role at Marston Bridge part-time, low profile, paid enough that he would not need night shifts again. He told her he needed a week to think. Renate Kohler called from her apartment in Brookline. Her husband had passed 3 days earlier. She was steady on the phone. Adam, any friend of Bernhard's is a friend of mine. When you've settled, call me. I want to meet Eloise. Whitley and Adam saw each other 4 times in 2 weeks, none of them at the office. Once on a walk in Boston Common, where the late autumn leaves were still on the maples. Once at a cafe on Newbury Street, where Whitley realized halfway through the conversation that she had not checked her phone in 40 minutes. Once when Whitley picked Eloise up from school because Adam was stuck at Helix repairing a rooftop air handler. Once over pizza at his apartment in Dorchester, where Eloise taught Whitley how to braid hair with the patience of a teacher. After the pizza, after Eloise had gone to sleep, Adam and Whitley sat at the kitchen table. Whitley looked at the drawings on the refrigerator, and at the small black and white photograph next to them. She did not ask. That's Lauren, Adam said. Capitol Hill. The day Eloise was 2 weeks old. She's beautiful. Yes. She was the funniest person I ever knew. Adam, Whitley said. I'm not trying to replace her. I couldn't. I just want to be here. If you'll let me. Adam looked at her for a long time. He didn't answer in words. He stood up, poured more tea, and set a fresh cup in front of her. That was the answer. Outside the window, snow was beginning to fall on Dorchester Avenue. 4 months later, at the end of February, Boston was still cold, but the snow had started turning to slush along the curbs, the early sign of spring. Adam had officially taken the senior advisor role at Marston Bridge 2 days a week, beginning in December. He kept his maintenance contract at Helix 1 day a week as well, not because he needed the money, but because Renate had told him, don't forget the corridors that held you when you needed to stay hidden. Saturday morning. Adam, Whitley, and Eloise walked across Boston Common. Eloise was wearing a small pair of roller skates Whitley had given her for her 8th birthday the month before. Whitley carried a paper cup of coffee. Adam carried a paper bag of stale bread. They reached the lake. Eloise knelt at the edge and began throwing bread to the ducks slowly, methodically, counting each one. Whitley and Adam stood a few steps back. Klaus called this morning, Whitley said. Hauptmann wants to meet with you in Munich in May, a new project not through me. Through you, directly. I'll go if Eloise can come. Her school break is the 3rd week of May. All 3 of us. Adam looked at her. If you want. Whitley didn't answer right away. She watched Eloise count ducks. Then, yes. I want. Eloise turned around and held out a hand to each of them. Daddy. Whitley. Come see the swans. They walked, Eloise in the middle, an adult on either side, her small hands holding theirs. As they crossed the little footbridge, Eloise pulled her hand free to point at a swan, and Adam's hand and Whitley's hand stayed where they were, close, for a second. Adam reached over and took Whitley's hand. The first time. Whitley didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the lake and smiled. But her hand tightened around his. Eloise turned. Daddy. There's a black swan over there. Whitley, are there black swans in Germany? I don't know. I'll ask Klaus. Eloise nodded, satisfied. They walked on. 3 shadows on the surface of the water. Adam, no longer in the faded plaid, wore the dark blue wool coat Whitley had given him for Christmas. Whitley, no longer the CEO blazer, wore a cream sweater and a tartan scarf. Eloise in her red coat, the same one, still holding the stuffed owl in her pocket. They sat on a bench facing the lake. Eloise leaned against Whitley on the left. Adam sat on Eloise's right. Whitley draped her arm around Eloise's shoulders, easily, as if she had always done it. She looked at Adam over the top of Eloise's head. She didn't say anything. Adam smiled, a quiet smile, not the smile of a widower, not the smile of a senior advisor, not the smile of a maintenance worker. Just the smile of a man sitting on a bench on a February morning in Boston Common, with his family. In the distance another child laughed. Eloise laughed back, not knowing why. Whitley laughed. Adam laughed. The surface of the lake held the 3 of them, and 2 swans drifting close to the shore.